Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is a conversation in jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Today, we are presenting part one of our two-part interview with jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, educator, and leader of the Thad Wilson Jazz Orchestra, my musical comrade, Mr. Thad Wilson. We ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology 101. That's $Jazzology 101. Enjoy the video. Hi, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is a conversation in jazz. Today we have the wonderful jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, educator. He's a producer. He's the leader of the Thad Wilson Jazz Orchestra. I call him a jazz warrior. Please welcome my musical comrade, Mr. Thad Wilson. Brother Thaddeus, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's my honor. You know,
all these accolades, I'm scared already.
No, I mean everything I see. No, man, you earned them. But yeah, so this is a conversation in jazz, man. Mm-hmm. And we over the years we've had conversations after the gig, before the gig, during the gig. And I've learned a little bit about some of your background, but there's some things I don't know that I would like to get some clarity on. We would like to get some clarity on. And I think it helps us to really understand your music, because when we learn about how you got to where you are, we can appreciate your music and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
My first question is, who is Thad Wilson?
Thad Wilson's trying to figure out who Thad Wilson is. Bro, you come out the box with the... No, I mean, who am I? I mean, I like to consider myself especially with this music, I kind of consider myself a more do-it-yourselfer kind of guy. Like, I thought about that. When I was thinking about this interview, I was like, okay, how do I describe myself, Yeah. And I was thinking, when it comes to how I've sort of, whatever skill set that I think I've acquired, musically, aesthetically, all that, I've just been a kid who's always really, really liked to pay attention to stuff, and kind of work it out. So in terms of, and I'm trying to relate that to, like, I can't really lay claim to a wealth of formal training. Although I did have formal training. I had, I didn't have a private teacher until I was a freshman in college.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So Thad Wilson is a cat that is just trying to really be honest about who he is and what he brings to the table musically without, feeling like I've got to follow a trend or, you know what I mean, or follow some formal, lineage of, like I respect all the greats, you know.
You've always seemed like a real people person, like that you love people.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk, that may have to do with your upbringing. So
yes, sir,
absolutely. We're going to talk about that.
Absolutely does. Absolutely. Yep.
Where are you originally from?
So that's a good question. I'm going to try to give you the most succinct answer. I was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay.
So I was born in Jersey.
Okay.
My dad was in the Air Force, so I was a military brat.
Wow.
So I lived there until I was about almost 5, and we moved to Texas. So I lived in Texas So this is when it gets kind of interesting, and I think this really kind of speaks to why I'm kind of the person I am now. So from the age of 4, I lived in Texas. By the time I would turn 5 or 6, we had moved to Kansas, and then from 6 to 7, we moved to Italy.
Wow.
I turned 7 in Italy. So in that 3-4 year span, I lived, and then my dad got discharged from the Air Force. He was asthmatic, and so we were in Italy at the time of the mid-air fuelings. This was the tail end of Vietnam.
Okay.
So this was 1972. And so my dad was stationed over there. He was on the project team for the mid-air fuelings. Remember, if you know those AWACS planes that used to stay up in, they wanted them to stay up in the air.
Wow.
The 24. That was my dad's. He was a fueler. So that was his project team. And so I don't know the pressures and the stress of that gig, and there's some racial stuff that went on too at that time. That kind of forced his health. His health got bad. So he got discharged honorably, but so we basically wound up leaving Italy and moving back to New Jersey to Elizabeth, and then we moved down south.
Wow.
Because him and my mom split up.
Okay.
Because that all of that created that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so when we got to Montgomery, I was in the second grade. So I lived there until the ninth grade. So you basically kind of grew up in Alabama? I mean, it's when you're my age now, it's like, wait a minute.
Wow.
55 years later, I can't really. Alabama was like a 9-year stretch.
Wow,
you know
that's
what I mean?
heavy, man.
Yeah.
So do you have family in Alabama?
All still to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, still to this day. Yeah, my roots are Alabama, but I'd like to think that I was raised in Jersey because most of my formidable years, like when life really hit me, I was living in Jersey. You know what I mean?
We might be related, man.
Of course.
I got a bunch of cousins in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
I know of the area. My folks are in what's called Chilton County. And Chilton County's claim to fame is it's the largest peach producing county in the country.
Okay.
So Georgia is the largest peach producing state.
Okay.
But Chilton County, Alabama was the largest peach producing county. And so my mom and all them, we used to pick peaches for summer jobs and all that stuff. Yeah.
My grandmother was from Alabama.
Okay.
And so I remember visiting when we were young. My cousins and my brother, we went there, man. And man, it's something about the South, man. And I mean, it was like we were family that came back home.
Right.
I still talk to I got a cousin, Dale.
Okay.
And and it's we stayed in contact and all that.
Sure, yeah.
But I got like a bunch of cousins, many I don't even know.
Well, see, that's what I always found interesting about my life up north when I lived in Jersey, New York. And, I mean, I took to it. I mean, I love New York. I mean, I still to this day, if I had the bread, I'd live in New York, But a lot of my relatives that grew up in New Jersey and New York, they're still there. I still got family in Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, all over. But they always go home for like a family event.
So the South?
Yeah, because, I had some cousins who, they lived in New Jersey, and they hadn't really kind of got acquainted with the whole reunion, going back home thing, right? And so they would go, but they weren't as regular as me. Like me and my family, we go every year. We're going to go down there every year whenever there's an event. And so they were down there, and they were like, what does this place mean to you? And I looked, I said, this is kind of like our Africa.
Wow.
Because it's our, when my granddad, the land he had, man, he had hundreds of acres of land. So everywhere you go, you can't date, it's like, it's all of that. So and when you get that experience, you start to be able to contextualize it when you get back up north.
So what was it like coming up, like growing, like at that age you got to Alabama? What was it like? I mean, was it fun? I mean,
I was a kid, man. So a lot of a lot of the Alabama experience was some of my long-lasting friendships started there. Like I've still got friends to this day that I've known since second grade, fourth grade, all of that stuff, and they're there. They're still there. Some of them are there. Some of them, actually, I got a buddy that lives up here. He's from Montgomery. That we grew. Yeah, so me and him check in from time to time. We don't talk as regular, but we like this.
You felt a lot of love coming up.
You feel the village more intimately down there.
Gotcha.
When you grow up, at least to my experience, when you grow up you have an experience down south where that southern thing,
that southern hospitality.
Yeah, but it's a black southern thing too. I want to make that distinction. It's how can I say it? It's as close to Africa, I think, as we could connect with.
I went to Ghana.
Yeah.
And they remind me of the South.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It reminded me. I mean, it was just. Yeah. It just reminded me and there's a smell like it was wood. I remember. There's certain things I remember when I went to the South.
Oh yeah.
The burning wood, the pig slop.
My mom. Now my mom was what they called a town girl. She lived about 12 or 14 miles from my father. Now, my father grew up, to this day where my grandparents live, there's still roads that are not paved. They still got dirt roads, right? Where my mom's side is, that's town. So all I was trying to say was when I would go visit my mom, the agriculture teacher at the high school lived right down the road.
Wow.
And so he had a farm. So, bro, I learned how to, he would slaughter a hog right in front of me.
Really?
Boom. I mean, and it was gruesome. But after he slaughters a hog, he says, now, son, that's the fat back. That's the, I'm not kidding you. He'd strip it down, and then we'd go, then it was like, it was almost like a horror. It's like a horror story. Because then he would take us to, like, they would, what they call, sterilize the piglets.
Wow.
Oh, bro, that was gruesome. And so I saw all of that stuff.
Wow.
Swimming in creeks, you know.
That's
like,
why you so crazy.
Yeah, of course. I'm a country boy at heart. I mean, I was just going to ask you. I'm a country boy at heart.
But that's why I think I like there's certain people I like to talk to you. Even if we disagree.
Yeah. Right, dig it, yeah.
Because you're passionate, I'm passionate, but it's all love, you know. And,
it's
just it just feel normal and natural,
absolutely.
You know?
Us folks, you know,
And although I'm from Philly, I feel like a country boy. And people say I sound like I'm from the country.
I don't know how this is going to be received by the folks out there, so forgive me, Philly people, if this comes off the wrong way. But I always felt like the more I got to know folks from Philly, the more I felt like, there's that one step away from New York City, but I think they got a deeper foot in the southern kind of connection for some reason. There's elements of it that just feel southern when I go to Philly. Like it's like, nah, you didn't get that. You're not northern. That's not, you know what I mean? Like that's not northern. You know, like Delaware, Philly, like that. You know, I always kind of felt that. Like I feel like they got a serious they never really lost that real because when you hit Jersey, New York, I mean, you really have to have strong ties down south. Like I think of that. I think of Ohio and Detroit. Like you really got to have strong ties down south to keep some of that. Otherwise,
did y'all have a big mama?
No, because now we start to separate the distinction. I feel like I have a very strong family background. Like both parents, like my dad grew up with both of his parents. I grew up for the most part with both of my parents. Like. My grandfather and my grandmother were like a real solid team. Wow. So I never felt like she was Big Mama. And I never felt like he was the domineering. Like they had they really had a solid, that's the best way I can describe it.
Does your kids, do you make sure your kids get some of that?
Oh, dude, so I'll give you this story. So 3 years ago, it was either 3 years ago, whenever we had the last reunion, because the last reunion we had was before the pandemic, and so that was about 2 or 3 years before the pandemic. So I'm going back three, maybe 4 years. And I had a tour. I was with the Blackbirds on tour, and we were trying to figure out if they should wait for me and we all head down south together. But my wife, who is an Irish, Italian, German girl, said, I'm going down. So now I go to London. I do we're there for like 6 nights. I think that's when we did Ronnie Scott's. But when I got back, I flew in to D.C. Now I'm getting ready to fly out. I'm calling my wife and my kids. So for 2 days, I can't find them. 2 days.
Wow.
So I hop on the flight. I'm like, I hope they are. I said, because, by the way, cell phone reception with my grandparents, you can't get no cell phone. You gotta, you gotta go to a sweet spot somewhere in the country.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I get there, bruh. I got my rental car. I get to my grandparents' house, and here's my wife walking down the street. My kids are up the street. So I said, I've been looking for you guys. She says, well, I was with Aunt Petunia last night. Settled right in.
Yeah.
It's an experience, man. I wish I could.
You can't even articulate it.
I wish, it's an experience. You have to really have that experience, and I think it has to be an experience that's not a one-off thing. Because I do have cousins from up north that they don't come down there. I'm not mad at them, but they don't come down there often enough to really get the real taste of what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
So did you come from a musical family? Or are you the first generation?
I'm probably, my mom was taught music. You know, again, she was a town girl, so all of them took music lessons. But in terms of a professional musician, I'm the first one. There's nobody else. My mom would play.
Anybody sing or?
Well, my mom would. You know, she liked to sing opera, and she was a huge fan of Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
So she would be around the house, you know, singing like Sarah.
You know where I'm going with this because I believe somehow some of these things get passed down. And
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You got that thing we call perfect pitch.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that. And I'm like, where did that come from?
Right.
But we'll talk about that.
I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea.
So, when did you start playing? Was trumpet your first instrument?
No, I started in the choir.
Oh, you started singing?
I started singing first. Yeah.
Wow.
So, remember, and I want to say this the right way. I don't want to just come off weird or bad, but, you know, yeah, Southern education is different. You know, when I got to Jersey, when my dad got out of the Air Force, second grade, when I got to school there, because I went to school, you know how the numbers, it was school number 3 in Elizabeth that I went to, right? And when I went there, I was in the second grade going to the third grade, and they were starting to offer music like in third, fourth grade there.
Wow.
But you didn't get music in down south until seventh grade. That's when I.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
So I started in the choir, and you know we were singing like, not madrigals, but we were just singing like popular stuff and maybe some gospel stuff or whatever. And we had like a barbershop thing, you know, 5'2", that kind of thing.
Wow, that's
Duke of Earl, you know. Singing.
So that explains why you sing. And we gonna talk.
Well, I
talk
try
about,
to sing.
No, you sing.
Well, I try to sing.
So when did you start playing trumpet?
It was seventh grade. I was in the choir, and the band room was on the other side. And so I kept hearing the band in the middle of choir rehearsal. And mind you, there were like 4 dudes in the choir. It's all girls. And so you know where I'm going with that. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to be around more fellas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I would hear the band over there, you know, finally one day I was walking to choir practice. Choir looked like class. And the band director, Mr. Nelson, was coming down the hall. And you know how kids are. Word had gotten out that Thad wants to be playing the band.
So you were popular.
I was just, you know, just kids, just students, you know. So, you know, word got to him. So one girl, I think it was, what was her name? Andrea Rollins, I think it was her. She was a flutist or whatever in the band. And she said, Miss Nelson, Thad want to play in the band.
Really?
Just like that. And so he walking down this, he said, so what instrument you want to play? I said, trumpet. I honestly didn't even think.
You just said trumpet?
I just said trumpet. It just flew out of my mouth.
Wow.
And the rest
Is history.
it's like history.
Wow.
I swear I did not, I can't remember prior to that moment thinking about playing the trumpet.
So did the school have instruments or did you have to get
We had to rent, you know.
You had to rent, okay.
Yep, I had an old King Cleveland.
Really?
600, yeah, I love that horn.
Wow.
Yeah, I had old King Cleveland.
So did you mentioned that you didn't study formally? Like,
Well, let me say it like this.
Initially.
Theory and all of that stuff didn't happen for me until I got to college.
okay.
yes.
How'd you learn how to play trumpet?
That's what I was trying to point out about the public school system back then. I mean, you know, for whatever it was worth, Mr. Nelson could successfully teach me the method.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So it was like a band, the teacher was teaching you.
Yeah.
That's how I learned, yeah.
But honestly, it was, because we lived in the project, so it was me standing out in the front of the yard at like 6, 7 o'clock at night trying to play taps.
Really?
I would be sitting out, and
Wow.
all the neighbors would be sitting, come on now. And I literally learned, and I remember specifically, I had started at the wrong first note. Because, you know, like on the trumpet, when you're playing taps, it's, you know, it's what they call the partials or the positions, right? So it's open position. You can play taps in open position. You can, but it's one valve. Right?
Yeah.
So when you play it in open position, it starts on our G, and I kept starting on C, and I kept thinking, why am I not playing this wrong? So I was like, I remember that specifically, man.
Wow.
That was my first sort of in the shed moment where, and then finally this kid up around the corner from me named Daryl Talbert, he was in high school and he played trumpet. But he was also a football player, so I was a little confused, but he played trumpet. Man, he said, "This is what you want to do," ba-da-da, and he just started ripping out. And he was like my hero.
Wow. And you got it.
And I got it because all I had to do was hear. All I had to do was hear it once.
So did music come easy for you?
Initially, I have to say, it kind of did. Yeah, initially, you know how it is, man. It's like concept. If you pay attention long enough, you can glean a concept, right? Then comes the work. You know what I mean?
Because that trumpet, man, I couldn't. Man, my brother, like I started with saxophone, my brother started with trumpet, and I used to try to play it. I could never get nothing out. I don't know, my lips too big or whatever.
Right. I mean, it's all about the shed. You know what I mean? Like I think I developed pretty early, or I developed reasonably well early because I just. Like they talk about Freddie Hubbard, he just had the trumpet with him all the time.
So you had a natural affinity to.
I love that instrument, but I mean I'm speaking more like as a kid rather than a musician. As a kid, it was something I was into, and I just loved that.
Yeah, because some people start early, man, and some people I taught kids that had talent, man. They had potential, right? And they just somewhere along the corridor.
They didn't put in the work.
Yeah. But Did you had you enjoyed it?
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, and at my school, the junior high school, he had a very wonderful way of competition.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It wouldn't be a formal audition, but when bands started, the way he'd pick out the parts is he just put the part in front of you. Whoever could play it, that's how he determined the chairs. And I was the reigning champ, man, for 3 years. Nobody could take my seat.
Wow.
And then this one kid, he took my seat man, I started crying.
I had one of those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I was really in, and I got
that's when you know you love it.
Well, I got a competitive thing too,
yeah,
what I mean? Like at that point, I was still playing football then, junior high school football, and so I was competitive.
Yeah.
I was like, he ain't taking my chair. And I missed one note in this little exercise. It wasn't hot cross buns. It was actually an exercise, And I missed one note, and he got that. And I was like, oh, man. And Mr. Nelson says, now, that's a serious young man. He said, but you don't need to be crying, but you a serious young man. He knew I was serious, and he gave me a ton of stuff. He was really, really influential. Him, Mr. Nelson was, if it weren't for him and Mr. Hollinger.
What was
Mr. Nelson.
What was his first name?
Richard Allen Nelson.
We want to give him some love because Richard Allen Nelson.
Yes, sir. Mr. Nelson. He set me up. I mean, he, I think he even got my trumpet for me because my mom couldn't afford it, and he, gave her a couple of months or whatever to start paying on it.
Does he still living?
Yeah.
Still living?
Now, Mr. Nelson was, he was also like not a real estate developer, but he had a bunch of apartment buildings that he owned. Yeah. So he was a, hard work, but he was our music teacher. Yeah. And he was a clarinetist.
Yeah. Me and my first teacher, Mr. Randy Navarre.
Yeah.
We're friends on Facebook.
RN, Richard Nelson, Randy Navarre.
Yeah.
Right.
And he gets to see, that's one of the beautiful things about teaching, man, to see. Yeah. I was one of his star students back then. Yeah. And I started in 5th grade.
Right.
Because I had that passion, man.
Yes, sir.
And who would ever think that years later, think how Facebook would reunite you with people that from elementary school.
Right.
And your first music teacher, period.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Beautiful thing.
Well, Tim Warfield met my high school teacher, band director.
Really?
Yeah, he was my high school band director from Montgomery. He was the band director I went to George Washington Carver High School, and he was the band director there. Now, that's when I started to realize the rigorous training that goes into being a musician.
Wow.
Mr. Hollinger taught me that.
Okay.
Mr. Nelson, kind of like a fatherly love, like he was Big Daddy to everything. He was just so supportive, but he wasn't having me work on like slurred tongue, back of the throat. He wasn't having me do stuff like that, But Mr. Hollinger kind of help us all understand what was required to be proficient on your instrument.
Okay.
You know, and so
And that's our high school.
yeah, that's my high school. I was at his school for 1 year. That's when I moved back to Jersey.
Okay.
So I was at Carver High School in the 10th grade for
Wow.
1 year, and my mom passed away, and that's when I moved back up to Jersey. And so Mr. Hollinger, those two,
Yeah.
mwah,
Yes.
those two, yeah, those two right there.
Teachers, man, so important.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and they were you know what I'm saying. Like they were dedicated professionals. They were not. This wasn't no mess for them. It
Man,
was,
I remember, man, when I started teaching, I got into teaching, man, just to try to make some extra dollars.
Right.
Try to get this thing for the long run. And man, I'm looking at all my boys on the road, Christian, and I'm like, God, why I'm here? I'm in the classroom teaching kids,
Right.
and man, I'm trying to figure out how to.
Right.
But man,
See, but I think them cats had a leg up on us in that I'm guessing now. I don't know that much about Christian, but I know he comes from some musical background.
oh yeah, his dad was.
Well, you see what I'm saying?
Dad.
So it was logical for him to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
But I'm just saying, I really appreciated over time the impact of having taught kids, young people.
Sure, yeah,
And how important that is.
I gave up on that.
Yeah. Man, I have students that hit me up, man, like that I taught, and when they were in elementary school, they called me and thank, man, that's, man, I was talking to one of my students for about an hour and a half, man, video. And he was just so happy that Mr. Park, and I remember him.
It's a gift, man.
Yeah.
To be able. I mean, I don't have the gift of teaching at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember vividly in college. I was a music ed major, and I remember they called it junior practicum. And so your junior year, you go visit the school and you watch how they teach. And I just remember sitting in the class, and the teacher went out. Say, hey, Mr. Wilson's going to be sitting in. Hi, Mr. Wilson. The teacher went out he went out for just a second to do something. Man, it was pandemonium in that class.
Well, that's part of the process.
And I said, it's not for me. I swear, Tone, I literally realized at that moment that this is not for me. And then somehow
you didn't stick it out long enough.
No, it wasn't for me. I mean, because I'm flighty. You know what I mean?
I know
I'm
you would be a
kid.
great teacher because you're a wonderful dad, and I can see how your kids love you.
Well, it depends on who they don't love me now. They're teenagers. They hate me.
I got that, but it's not even about music per se. I wasn't about but it's about that thing that you're teaching. This was like a father figure or somebody who genuinely is trying to bring the best out of you.
Right, absolutely.
That's what.
Yeah, I did that.
And people can feel that. Kids can feel when it's genuine.
Right.
So I mean, but so when you mention your teachers and those teachers that really set you up for your for what you have become, it makes me reflect on how important teachers are.
Oh, they're extremely important.
And how valuable. Sometimes you feel like it's a thankless job because you don't get it's not an immediate gratification thing with teachers. I mean, you get some little moments, but the gratification is after years when you see your student and they're doing this or they're doing that, or they come back and hit you up and that sort of thing.
Right.
That's the
because otherwise they have no concept or no connection to the concept of a village.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? They don't have a connection now. If they don't have teachers, they're missing critical elements that contribute to their life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you gotta have.
Let me qualify that. Teachers who care.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to say that earlier. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So when did you find out you had perfect pitch?
Mrs. Montgomery, who was the choir teacher at Carver. So when I got to Carver, I was still in the marching band, but I also stayed in the choir there.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined the choir there. And we were singing barbershop quartet stuff, 5'2", and I was the tenor. And, the barbershop stuff, man, at that time, the tenor parts were high. And so she started trying to direct us on this one song, and I was the only one paying attention, but she didn't give us a cue note. And I just started singing. And she said, young man, do you know what key? I said, yes, ma'am. We're in the key of F, right? And she said, yes. So she said, wait just a minute. So she went over to the piano and she just went, what's that note? I said, oh, that's a D flat. I mean, I didn't know honestly, I didn't know what perfect pitch was. I knew my notes at that point. You know what I mean? I'm in the 10th grade now, so I'm way further down the road than when I was in the 7th grade. And so I didn't, I can't fault the system down there. But yeah, they do play a role in it in terms of what you're exposed to. Mm-hmm. When I got up north, it was just a different exposure. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like I could feel the pedagogy more. But like what came from what and this, that, and the other. You know?
But you discovered perfect pitch down there.
Yeah, she told me.
Wow.
She told me. She said, young man.
And what is perfect pitch? Like, how would you define it?
Well, they call it absolute pitch. Like I'll tell you why I have a weird quirk with the concept of perfect pitch is because I'll tell you how I kind of resolve notes in my mind or what I'm hearing is for some reason it's always in my ear. Concept B flat. Wow. It's always in my ear. And naturally when you start getting into like if you play a etude or a technical exercise or a characteristic exercise, you're manipulating intervals, right? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm playing an etude, well, I got different intervals, and that gave me a reference to that. So I always used to kind of associate whatever note I was hearing to that.
Is that note buzzing in your head?
No, it just for some reason I just hear that note.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I feel that people with perfect pitch experience music on a deeper level for some reason, because because sometimes I'll get lucky and I'll be like, oh, I don't, and you can't explain it, but man, because not only that, man, I mean I notice you can hear chords. You playing the wrong note. That note right there. That should be an E flat. You're playing E.
Right.
So you're hearing more notes, more than one note at the same time. So that's some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really go much deeper into my explanation of it, except to say, we all resonate. There's always vibrations. You know what I mean? Like there are sounds that resonate within you, and so I'm gonna go way out on the limb because me and a buddy were having this conversation. He's a real good friend of mine. He's Ron, and we were talking about this same thing. This is years ago though. And I said, I always think of it as, whatever vibrations I'm hearing or sonic frequencies I'm hearing, it kind of represents the planet that I occupy. You know what I'm saying? Like if your planet occupies a different frequency. Okay. So you dig what I'm saying? Yeah. So in order for you to kind of find your own resonance and to find a connection to something that you just heard resonated, well, I don't think you're just picking it out off. It's related to, and
so you got to find your own.
Right. So some people might technically call that a good relative pitch because you've heard that, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I don't. I think we all hear it. I think you all hear sound and vibration. It's all around. You know what I mean?
Well,
you just got to pay attention to it. Okay. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave that.
I wish it were that easy. Okay. So let's move on. So you also performed in the New Jersey All-State Jazz Ensemble.
Audition, I was an alternate.
Okay.
82, 83. Yep.
And what was the All-State Jazz Ensemble?
That was kind of the precursor to like the McDonald's All-American thing, but it's a statewide thing, right? Yeah. You go and you audition.
It's funny because I was in the All-City Philadelphia All-City Jazz and Concert Band in Philly. Right. They always use that All-City.
Right. Well, that was my junior high school experience in Montgomery.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was all city. Mm-hmm. But when I got up to Jersey, for some reason, it would go statewide.
Okay, like and all the
from all over, yeah. And remember, Jersey's not a huge state. Yeah. So you could probably get away with that. But Pennsylvania's a big.
Do they still do those types of things?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I know they had what they called a Grammy band. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I mean, when you get all the talented musicians from.
Yeah, I know there's a forum for it. I just don't know if it's called All State or not. Yeah.
You've received an All-American High School Music Award. What was that for?
That was kind of a voted thing. So me, Mark Biegert, me and him were he was like the section leader, this marching band stuff, but people voted on kids that they heard in the state.
Okay.
And somehow, and we've got a write-up in the paper and all of that, so people voted on who they heard. And I want to say that was based on marching band stuff, because I had a solo in MacArthur Park and another song, I forget, there's another song that I had a solo in. So I was getting kind of exposure for my little solo. Which,
okay, yeah.
It was marching band stuff, so it wasn't, But yeah, that was, Elizabeth, New Jersey was more the precision and all that kind of stuff. They weren't like Carver. Carver was a dancing band. They would play, it was like when you see Grambling or FAMU or something, like Carver was one of those kind of high schools. Whereas, Elizabeth was more precision, and we competed, I didn't have a free weekend from the 10th grade, 11th grade until I graduated high school. Wow. Because we were always gone competing. We went up to Canada, all kind of places. So
you had a great foundation for coming up in music.
It just got increasingly better.
Yeah.
As I developed my experiences and my exposure to, cats who could lay something on me, got better and better.
Yeah. Where'd you go to college?
New Jersey City University is called, but it used to be called Jersey City State College.
Okay. Who'd you study with on trumpet there?
A guy by the name of Richard Lowenthal. Lowenthal. He was with the Empire Brass, which was like the rival brass. No, I'm sorry, was it Empire? No, there's one that's, Canadian Brass is a famous one. Empire Brass was like a rival to Canadian Brass. So he was mainly a classical trumpet. He had gotten away from classical music and was really, because he was the head of the jazz studies department. He also at Manhattan School of Music in the 80s. So he was, like we had ringers. I would go play with their band and their cats, so he was working kind of both bands. And, that was my first private teacher.
Wow. Do you remember when you first heard jazz?
Ooh. Yes. Now I got to answer this in two parts. When I first heard musicians that influenced me, that played instruments, instrumental music, it was the trumpet solo in Teddy Pendergrass's Come and Go With Me, because there's a really slick trumpet solo in that. And then I heard Tom Brown and Chuck Mangione. Those are the three trumpeters or cats playing my instrument that I first heard and said, wow, I want to kind of get to that. Then, again, when I moved to Jersey, my 11th grade year, I'm over my cousin's house, and her husband was a Cornell graduate. He went to Cornell, but he was also the DJ of the jazz station in Cornell when he was in college. So he looked at me and he says, so you want to be a jazz musician, huh? I was like, yeah, because at that time, I was starting to dig into Fats Navarro, because remember, I was competing, for the All-State Jazz Ensemble, so I had learned a couple of Fats Navarro, so I think I learned 4, transcriptions. And so he said, come on here with me. So we went up to his attic, and bro, he must have had about 3,000. So he said, this is Louis Armstrong, Hot 5, here's Hot 7. Here's the Chicago tenors. Here's the Texas tenors. Here's Arthur Prysock. He just, and that was it. I was off, literally off and running.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I was probably in the 12th grade at that time. So I hadn't really, gotten hip. I still didn't know much about Lee Morgan or Clifford. I didn't really know much about them cats.
So would you say that experience right there was the initial?
Jazz. That was my initial jazz. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, some people, when they hear jazz, they got to grow on them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you guys, particularly younger folks.
Sure. I dig.
They're coming up in hip hop and R&B and all this stuff.
Well, we did too, to some degree. That's what I'm saying.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, when I first heard jazz, I was knocked out. blown away.
Really?
Yes, sir. I was like, what is this?
Right. So now let me ask you this, briefly, quickly. Do you feel like it was in your neighborhood, the music? You could find it somewhere in your neighborhood?
No.
It was nowhere?
No.
Where did you find it then?
I think I inherited it from my grandfather and my father. I think that's why I say certain things.
So they checked it out. Somebody.
Oh yeah, my
there you
grandfather
go. There's your answer.
They were into. My grandfather had albums, but I never went over. I'm saying when I heard Charlie Parker, at about 12 years old, man, I was floored. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
right.
You know, I mean, I want to do this.
See, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't have. Let me say it the right way. I didn't have a sophisticated lineage in that way. My folks just listen to popular music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I love them for that. I mean, you know, it's cultural, you know, but there wasn't even Louis Prima. There was none of that really to speak of. It was popular music, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Aretha
I love slow jams. I was listening to
all of that,
stuff.
yeah.
I was, you know, me and Mrs. Jones, you know.
Right. All of that, all of that.
But man, I never compartmentalized music into. I just listen to, you know. I like love music. Just touched me a certain way, man.
Right.
And I mean, I can go from Grover. I can listen to hip hop. I love it all.
Here's what got me. Here's the way I looked at it, man. When it really kind of gut punched, just like, wow, this is some heavy stuff. As I started to study the cats and my knowledge of harmony and all those kinds of things started to come together. For me, it really became like, wow, I now have a firm identity as a black man that there's some bad stuff coming. And it's been here.
Yeah.
But I hadn't noticed it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't in my vista. And when I started checking out them cats, it's like they had intelligence, you get what I'm saying?
Yes,
like
sir.
they had depth of thought, they had soul. It's like
it's like, how could you make Clifford
spontaneously?
How could you think like Clifford Jordan's a second class citizen?
Right.
Charlie, I mean, I'm talking about like
they were intelligent, soulful, and so that's what got me. Okay. It was like I didn't even know, man. For a long time, you just live your life and you you buy into whatever it is you think you're supposed to be,
Did you remember when you made a decision to say, I want to be I know you played trumpet. So first you had to make the decision, I want to be a musician.
Right.
Then I want to play jazz. Did you have any experience that helped to
that was Roy's fault. That was Roy Hargrove's fault.
Let's talk about Roy.
But I need to get somewhere else before I get to Roy.
Okay.
So before I kind of got out, left college, I didn't graduate. I spent 4 years, but I didn't graduate. When I left college, I was working for an airline called People Express. It was like a part-time job. But I had flight benefits. I could fly anywhere they flew and all that. Okay. So I really liked that work, right? So in addition to like playing, I was playing a lot of Latin music then, merengue, salsa, and stuff like that in college. So when I worked for the airline, they got bought out by Continental, and specifically the president or one of the big execs of the company pulled me into his office, and I'm like 20 now, maybe. I think I'm like 20. Pulls me into his office and says, Thad, there's going to be a lot of changes, this and the other. We really like your work. We want you to be a part of the scheduling department in Houston. So we're offering you a job in Houston. We're going to put you up in an apartment for a week till you get settled in.
Where were you living?
In Jersey.
I
was in Jersey. And so but I hadn't graduated college. I was still in college. I still, I was like, so... Man, I went home. I was like, man, they're going to start me at $21,000. And then, this is 1984, 85, something like that.
That's good money.
That was good money, right? So I came home. I told my pops, I said, man, this is what they're going to do, this and another. He looked at me and says, man, what's wrong with you? He says, you're in school for music. So it was my father, ironically, because he's a blue-collar guy. He's he's HVAC guy, like, my background is hardworking folks. Like, the music thing, it was not something that you thought to run to do, right? And so when he told me that, that kind of solidified, well, my dad sees something in me.
Wow. So he was telling you to follow the music?
Yeah, he said, well, you're in school for music.
Wow.
I was like, wow, okay. So he don't care whether or not I get this, this money over here. Because it would have changed my life. It would have changed my life completely.
Another type of parent would be like, boy, you better go.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what got me, man.
Wow.
I was like, wow. I wasn't kind of expecting that. Because my siblings were like, this music thing's cool, but bro, you need to, you know what I mean? Like they were like, nah, bro, you need to go get that money, right? You need to go security and pension and all that. But my father saw something, right? And so that was the first thing. But as I move further into my life, I realized that, I do need to make some money. So when I was living in New York was kind of tough on me. And I was a flight attendant.
You moved to New York?
Yeah. When I got out of college,
okay,
I lived in Atlanta for a hot minute, and then I got hired by Pan Am. And so I was a flight attendant for Pan Am.
Okay.
Again, trying to work, trying to eat, all that kind of stuff. And so when I was a flight attendant...
And you were gigging as well?
Little bit.
Okay.
I put my horn down for about 2 years in that little time span.
Wow.
So I'm in New York. I'm still going to jazz clubs and stuff and checking out the, but I'm just not playing. I'm like, ugh, maybe I should leave this thing alone. So this is what I'm getting to with Roy. I'm in New York. One of my buddies calls me up and says, hey man, let's go to Smith's. Yeah, where we want to go? Hey, I ain't been to Bradley's in a while. So I go to Bradley's. And you know, Bradley's had like a partition. So there was like the bar area, behind the partition was like where you could sit down and eat if you wanted. But you couldn't see the band. So I'm sitting down to eat, gourmeting it up, man. I'm chilling, grabbing a little wine. You know me with my wine. I got my wine. And the band was on intermission. So when we walked in, there was no band. It was just, you saw them set up. I didn't see nobody. And so we sit down, start eating. The band starts playing. And man, I knew the band sounded young, but they were swinging so hard. I got up out of my seat and walked around the corner, and it was a 21-year-old Roy Hargrove, a 20-year-old Antonio Hart, Hutchinson,
Steve Scott,
Christian McBride, and I think it was like a 17, 18-year-old Dwayne Burno, because Dwayne...
Ooh, Dwayne...
Yeah, well...
My buddy, high school,
Because something happened with Chris. And so, in the middle of the tune, Chris puts his bass down and walks out, and Dwayne Burno picks up the bass and starts...
Wow!
I'm not making this up.
Wow!
But just the energy of that night, literally that night, I decided this is what I want.
Wow!
From that experience. I'm not making that up.
What was it about that experience that compelled you?
Because I needed somebody to help me understand that, hey man, this is a viable art form. That I mean, the '80s were a little odd, for me as a aspiring cat. I mean, I had the local Newark scene. I was like a lot of the places I would go visit and check out music was, and where I lived in Plainfield, Jersey was kind of an organ town. Like I don't know if you remember Jimmy Ponder and cats like that. Jimmy Ponder was a guitarist. Eddie Gladden. There's a tenor player by the name of Leo Johnson that my buddy studied with, who was like one of the main stage. He was Dexter Gordon. Woody would pop through some of those places. But in terms of like commercial viability, you weren't really seeing anybody. I mean, I think we were all hanging on to the Harper Brothers. Remember when the Harper Brothers first came out? That was like really the only group that
Roy brought something to the music, man. I mean, initially...
that generation of cats did, I think.
Initially, it was Wynton, for me, because that's who I remember in high school hearing Wynton. He was just, man, when he came out that, Black Codes and all that, man, and they would come to Philly, and I was in high school, man.
Right.
And man, and went, after, we would go behind.
See, but I have mixed feelings about how Wynton got moving initially with that, because, again, I was telling you, when I was in Atlanta, I was still listening, but I wasn't playing, right? And so I went to my brother's house, and he had his little album collection of stuff. And I looked down, and I was like, oh, you got Wynton's album? He said, oh, you can have that. I got it, but I didn't like it.
What album was that?
Think of One.
Okay.
Think of One. And I remember thinking to myself, my brother was more of a smooth jazz cat anyway. He wasn't into like straight ahead.
Yeah.
Now he's got his palate is a little different. Like he kind of gets what I was trying to lay on him, But back then, he ain't had no time for straight ahead. He didn't, he didn't know what it was, and he didn't really care about it, know. And so, I just kept thinking that there were a lot of people that had that album in their hands only because of the commercial thing that was happening. Like he was Columbia, you know what I mean? Like he was really well supported.
Well, yes, but Wynton inspired Christian McBride. All the
I get that. I get that's another side thing I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
And Wynton brought something to jazz that a lot of the visual. He looked cool.
Oh yeah,
and that the girls.
Oh, he was my man. I wore the horn ring glass in college. Yeah. And
because all that's part of the music.
Of course,
that's why.
I'm
doing it.
Of course,
you did. It's all good, but back in the day, jazz cat, you could wear overalls and whatever. So playing.
No, he did. He literally.
He made it look cool.
He revived it. He really revived it. Really, he really brought energy to it that like made it for real.
Yeah,
and you had to deal with it.
And we, the young cats, because I'm in Roy's. I'm part of Roy, and I met Roy in high school.
Yeah,
and I went to school with McBride, and so we Wynton was like, wow,
God.
Yeah, we was like,
but all of them, Wynton, Tane, they were all
Marcus
like
Roberts.
They were all like,
what's my man?
Kenny Kirkland.
Kenny Kirkland.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Bob Hurst. And so but Roy had something special.
Always did.
He had,
Always
and I
did.
met Roy in 1987 at the downbeat competitions in Chicago.
Wow.
We had to. That's what all these bands from different parts.
So were you in a big band, or were you?
I was with the All City Jazz. I was in the band with Christian McBride.
Oh, gotcha. And Joey D from Jazz, right?
And we had and so we and we were one of the top bands.
Right.
I think that, they had different categories.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
And man, when Roy Band got up, then Roy started playing. Man, everybody was like, this cat just had that thing.
So now, fast forward to, I go to Bradley's, I check him out, I'm digging it, I'm like, I'm in. So about 6 to 9 months later, my chops are kind of feeling pretty good, and I'm doing sessions, I'm going to the sessions and all of that stuff, and this cat, Ted Curson, he was that was Mingus, he was in Mingus's band, trumpet player, used to play a pocket trumpet. But the Blue Note had a late night jam session. It didn't start till like 1 a.m., right? And so that's all the young cats would go. They would go to Ted's. And Ted was real friendly. He was a real nice cat. He was very welcoming. He wasn't tripping. He no ego. But for some reason, it seemed like it felt like Roy was following me around town at one point because everywhere I'd go, he would show up.
Wow.
And I saw it with my eyes, and I just, it was something, it really was something to behold because, like there were a lot of good players, man, that would go and sit in, of course you had some that were, but immediately when Roy got up and started playing, the whole band would change. And I just kept, you would see it every time and it wasn't like he was trying to like vibe. It was just him.
Yeah.
Like he just, like you say, he just had it, man. I was like, I mean, the whole vibe, the whole energy of the tune. I mean, it might be sad, and as soon as he got up there, like the whole energy of the tune, he just had that vibe, man.
Yeah, man. It was, and some people are called.
Right.
And he's one of those cats, man. But
we battled. I have to admit, we battled.
Yeah, well,
we battled. I used to go look for him too.
That was your measuring. That was your measuring rod.
I used to go look for him too.
But that was good for the music because he made everybody. He brought that standard, and everybody was like, "Oh, let me bring this." Okay, it's like that.
Right.
But that's and again, he also made it. He made it. He was cool because he had the way of dressing, and then the girl. Part of the music. Like in hip hop, they got the girl. Jazz need the girls. You know what I'm saying? They were at that time, and then Spike Lee had.
So you weren't going to Europe. You were still in the States.
Well, I went to Europe I went to Europe. And
I'm saying for that component of what you're talking about.
No. Yeah. But around that time, I was on college. I was at Howard.
Gotcha.
You know, and there was a thing, man. I mean, Spike Lee had Mo Better Blues.
Right.
So people were, and at that time, there was a kind of consciousness.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, even hip hop had a conscious thing going on. Hidden for self-destruction and all this. Fight the power.
Right.
And so jazz was in there too. You know, it was so it was this, you know, it was a beautiful period, man. You were in New York in a nice period, man.
Kind of the last vestige of like grind and gritty.
Man, I wish I would have went to New York around that time. But they came to the beautiful thing. They came to D.C. They always came to.
Well,
DC.
see what I found nice about what I think that era or that period set up was it taught these younger cats what it means to be able to go to New York and survive and not get swallowed up. Because when I lived there, bro, there weren't no group houses and 8 cats in an apartment in Brooklyn. It wasn't none of that.
Yeah.
It was, you got a place? No? Well, then you might have to go back to Jersey. You know what I mean? Like,
wow, yeah.
You didn't have that, at least to my knowledge. I didn't know of a lot of cats that were like maybe 6 deep, you know, because he's on the road most of the time. You didn't have that, you know. Okay. Like, so when I talked to like, you know, when I was talking to Amin and, you know, different cats, Eric, you know, they all had, they could relate to that experience of like, wow, yeah, we got this warehouse in Brooklyn and it's like 3,000 square feet, you know, and the rent's maybe $3,000, but my portion is like 500.
Yeah.
You know, and I could make that in a month. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas I didn't. No, I was the Latin gigs and stuff that I was doing. They didn't.
Yeah.
You know, my apartment was 7. I lived on the Upper East Side, and that, you know, I had me and my girlfriend at that time, and I'm going back to like 89, 90, and that apartment was like $850.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, now that place is like $3,000 or something. Might be $5,000 for that same studio. Wow. You know what I mean? So. Yeah. You needed to pool resources, and that's what I love about these young cats. I think they got that.
Yeah, no doubt.
We didn't, you know.
So, and we're going to this first half. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. Then we're going to take a break.
Yep.
And I want to learn. We're going to go more into some of the other your professional career and that sort of thing. What about jazz compels you? Why do you play? I mean, what is it about jazz that really? Why do you do this thing called jazz?
For me, it's as close to the complete expression of myself as I can get to through music. Like jazz says that for me because it's pliable. You know what I'm saying? Like we're having conversations about whether hip hop should be incorporated into jazz or whether gospel, but they all are. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big Marquise Hill fan. I like him. I like Jason Palmer. You know, I like Corey Wilkes. You know, I like some of the younger cats, and they all have a different thing going on with their presentation, and it's not just swinging, dang. They're not just swinging, you know. But they can swing if they need to, you know. And so I like the fact that whatever it is that I'm trying to express, this vehicle that I know of as jazz. Yeah, I'm not gonna get caught up in the political debate about the word jazz.
Gotcha.
For me, it's not that important. For me.
I got you.
For me, but if a cat chooses not to call it jazz, I respect that too. But for me, it's okay because it doesn't define me. You know what I mean? It truly doesn't. I'll let the marketers try to worry about that because that to me feels more like a commercial thing, like commerce. That's the language of commerce. Yeah. I'm trying to create some beauty and some other things, you know. And so for me, I ain't necessarily got a problem with it. So, but it allows me. It's the vehicle that allows me to express all that I am. Yeah. You know, whether I'm sad, happy, contemplative, intelligent, dumb. You know, I found that in this music that we call jazz. You know.
And also, this is my last question. I've always watched you, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know.
And
little bro.
Yeah, it's all good. But you seem to be a natural leader, and you seem to have you know. I've always gotten that from you, man. You weren't never scared.
Well, you know, it's
and so what is your perspective on leadership? And then we're gonna take a break.
I found myself kind of being. That's not fair. That's not right to say. Let me say it the way I feel it. Somehow I've naturally fallen into leadership roles, meaning when I don't think I groomed myself well enough to be a good sideman. That might be the better way to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I might not have groomed myself well enough to be a sideman. In other words, if you come to me with your music and if I'm a working cat, well, depending on where my head's at, I might not be able to interpret your music the way you hear it or the way you want me to play it because I need time. Mm-hmm. And if you're a pro, you don't get no time.
Yeah.
You know? If I hire you to come and play the lead alto part in my band, I want you to play my stuff. Yeah. With me, it's different because I like to take my time absorbing the information that I'm going to put back out.
Gotcha.
And if it's not coming from me, it's going to take me a minute to get to where you need me to get to. And it's not because I don't want to read your stuff or interpret. It's just, I don't know, man. I can read music. You know, we've been in situations where I've had to do that. But when you start getting into me interpreting or being a good side man, we're going to have to spend time together.
But even outside of music, you have a leader mentality.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, that's my daddy's side.
That's your dad?
Yeah, my dad's side, it's like that's...
It's beautiful, man, because I learned from it. Like,
yeah.
I learned from people around me.
Right.
And I'll take a little bit of that from you.
Right.
I'll take a little bit of that from
Absolutely.
And I'll make this.
Right.
But yeah, but I always admired that about you. You're a great communicator. You know what I mean?
I get that. I will say that. That's my dad.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
and those things were natural?
Yeah, you know me, I always speak anecdotally, right?
Yeah.
So my son came to me one day and he said, and you know kids, he must have been 3-4 years old, and he says, "Daddy, who am I?"
Wow. Wow.
Just like that. And man, I'm telling you, literally, when he said that, I immediately said, "Man, you don't know who you are?" And as I said it, it sounded like my father's voice. And I started laughing.
Wow.
Because that's my pops. Mm-hmm. What he's slick at doing is he'll throw the question back at you. Wow. So now you got to think about it. But guess what? Why he's doing that? Because it gives him more time to think. So he said, "You don't know who you are." Because he's going to think about your question, right? Yeah. And so I kind of caught myself doing that, and I said, "Oh, man, you don't know." Because the old man is like our little coin, you know. I said, "Oh, man, you don't know. Yeah. And then I said to him, I said, "You're what I'm becoming. I'm what you once were. You're looking at your past. I'm looking at my future."
Wow, that's heavy.
I mean, but it's, things come to you if you take your time and you think. You think through them. And so like that question, that's the best answer I could give him.
Wow.
You know
what I learned from you in this first part of this conversation, man? I'm a cat that I respond and react. You absorb.
I try to.
Yeah, you absorb and then you project, and then I've always had to be quick on my feet. But I like that, man. I'm gonna have to process that and start absorbing because then
that's why you got a problem with the perfect pitch thing, because you're too busy. You're too busy.
I remember Skip Pruitt, the saxophone player. He told me, he said, "Man, you need to slow down," and he was right.
But that's how you built it, and it works for you. You know what I mean? Like it's not. It's I don't know your whole life, but it doesn't seem like it's adversely affecting your life. It seems like it actually serves a good purpose in your life.
I make it work.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, man, we're gonna this is great conversation,
very
man.
Nice,
yeah.
Nice.
And
thanks.
This is the first half.
I know.
We got another little part.
I'm out of stuff to tell you now. I told you everything.
Yeah, it's all good. No, we got a lot to talk about.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, you've been listening to Mr. Thad Wilson. We learned a lot about him. We got more to go though, and we'll be right back. This is a conversation in jazz.